If you believe these stories must be remembered, subscribe to Echoes of Valor and help keep history alive. By the first week of November 1944, the Hurtgen Forest had already earned its reputation as the place where sound died before it reached your ears. The rain had fallen for 13 straight days, turning the forest floor into a slow-moving ocean of mud that swallowed boots, helmets, and occasionally entire men. The sky was a permanent sheet of iron, leaking a cold, colorless drizzle that blurred the trees into a single mass of gray. American patrols advancing along the Cowl Trail moved like ghosts through a landscape designed to erase them. Every pine looked identical. Every shadow felt wrong. Nothing smelled like gunpowder until it was already too late. Attached to one of these patrols was a 22nd Infantry Regiment Scout Sniper, an unremarkable title on paper, but in Hurtgen, it meant being the only man expected to see through a forest that wanted everyone blind. His assignment was simple in briefing, but deadly in reality. Push east toward the higher ridge and identify the shooter who had, over the past 3 days, killed 2 lieutenants and a company commander with single, precise rounds. No muzzle flash, no repeat shots, just the echo dying somewhere between the trees, leaving behind a body on the ground and a unit too afraid to move forward. Rumors spread faster than orders. Some said the shooter wasn't a single sniper, but a team. Others whispered about a ghost in the pines. The sniper didn't believe in ghosts, but as the patrol crept deeper into the dripping woods, he felt something he trusted even less than superstition: the unmistakable sense of being watched.
By dawn the next morning, the forest had grown even quieter, quiet enough that every drop of water falling from the pines sounded like a footstep. The patrol advanced only a few hundred yards before the first sign appeared. A single American helmet lying upright on a stump, rain pooling inside it. No blood, no body, just the helmet, placed too deliberately to be chance. The sniper froze. It wasn't bait, it was a message. Whoever they were hunting understood American movement patterns well enough to predict where a patrol would pass. The trees around them looked unchanged, but the sniper studied them with the same suspicion he would give a rifle barrel aimed at his chest. A cluster of branches broken at slightly wrong angles, a patch of bark scraped clean on a tree that should have been untouched. Small things, barely noticeable, but together they formed a pattern. Someone had been here, watching. The patrol leader signaled a halt, but the sniper was already kneeling, scanning the tree line through the mist. Whoever the German shooter was, he moved like someone who understood the forest better than any map could illustrate. There were no tracks in the mud, no spent casings, and no disturbed brush, just a faint chemical residue on a fallen log where a rifle might have rested. The sniper touched it with his glove and felt the grit of dry carbon, recent, maybe a few hours old. The realization hit him with the force of a rifle butt. The man they were hunting wasn't just skilled, he was close. Very close, and judging by the unnatural stillness settling over the pines, he wasn't retreating. He was waiting for the patrol to take one more step into his kill zone.
They found the first body at 8:12, face down in the moss, rifle still slung across the shoulder, No sign of struggle. A single dark entry wound under the left ear, precise enough that the patrol medic whispered the same word everyone else was thinking: sniper. But it wasn't the kill that chilled the American marksman. It was the angle. The shot had been taken from above, somewhere between the split trunks of two enormous pines, spaced barely a yard apart. It was a position that offered a perfect field of fire, but almost no room for escape. A death trap for any shooter who wasn't absolutely certain of his timing. The Americans studied the bark, the scuffs, the faint toe marks pressed into the moss, and realized the truth. The German hadn't just picked the spot. He had rehearsed it. Every tree around them, every rise in the land, every stretch of undergrowth had been measured and filed away in his mind. This wasn't a sniper moving through the forest. This was a predator who lived in it. The patrol spread out, nerves stretched thin as wire. The marksman moved slowly around the kill site, listening more than looking. The forest was too quiet again. Even the wind seemed to hesitate between the branches. Then he saw it. A second firing position 50 yards east, concealed so carefully it blended into the roots. The German had shifted after the kill, anticipating the American approach, but something else was wrong. The position wasn't abandoned. A single brass casing lay half buried in the pine needles, still warm when the marksman touched it. The realization hit like a blow to the chest. The enemy hadn't fired and fled. He had fired and stayed. Somewhere in the suffocating silence, the German was still watching them, studying their reactions, deciding who he would take next. The first shot had been a warning. The next would be the start of the duel.
By late afternoon, a thick wall of fog rolled into the pines, swallowing shapes, muffling sound, turning the gray woods into a shifting labyrinth. To the American marksman, it felt less like weather and more like a curtain lowering before an execution. Visibility collapsed to mere feet. Trees materialized only when he was close enough to touch them. Every crack of a branch, every whisper of wind against needles seemed amplified. The patrol tightened their formation, voices low, steps controlled. But the fog favored the German. He had been fighting in these forests for years. He knew how to move without leaving sound, how to estimate distance by air density, how to time his breathing so even thin fog wouldn't betray motion. The marksman noticed the first sign of danger, a fresh indentation in the wet moss, the outline still sharp. Not a boot, a knee rest, a deliberate firing position. The German hadn't lost them. He was closing in. The first shot came so suddenly the patrol didn't hear the rifle, only the impact. A dull, wet thud as the point scout collapsed into the fog. The marksman dropped instantly, pressing himself into the earth as the squad scattered for cover they couldn't see. The fog turned the battlefield into a guessing game, perfect for a hunter who didn't need to see his prey clearly to predict their movements. The American crawled toward a fallen log, heart pounding, forcing himself to stay silent, to become smaller than the terrain. Then he saw it, a faint, unnatural line in the fog ahead, like a vertical tear. It was the barrel of the German's rifle, slowly lowering after the shot. The marksman froze, calculating angles, timing, distance. The German was repositioning for a second kill. The pharmacist seemed to hold its breath. The duel had fully begun now, not in open ground, but in a world of ghosts, where the one who moved first would die. The fog thinned just enough for shapes to regain edges, revealing the terrain ahead. 3 converging ridgelines, forming a narrow, bowl-shaped clearing. The patrol called it a dead zone the moment they saw it, a place where any movement could be observed from multiple angles. But the marksman realized something far worse. The German had driven them here intentionally. Every clue they had followed, every rustle they had mistaken for movement, every empty cartridge they had found had been a breadcrumb leading them into this natural killing ground. Pines towered above like silent sentries, their roots twisting through soil saturated with melt water. The air was unnervingly still. It was a place designed for one purpose: control of sight lines. And the German sniper now owned all 3. As the squad fanned out cautiously, the marksman felt the shift in atmosphere, a subtle tightening like a trap's jaws closing. They weren't hunting. They were the hunted. The first round struck the bark of a tree inches from his head, exploding into splinters. The squad dove for whatever cover the clearing offered: fallen trunks, shallow divots, exposed roots, but the geometry of the terrain betrayed them. From the ridgelines above, the German could fire, relocate, fire again, each shot from a slightly different angle. Panic threatened to spread. Every soldier knew that a single sniper, positioned correctly, could erase an entire patrol before help arrived. The marksman pressed his cheek to the cold earth, analyzing the pattern in the gunfire. The German wasn't shooting randomly. He was testing them, probing their reactions, mapping their positions in his mind. Then the marksman saw it. A narrow wedge of blind ground near the base of the north ridge, a tiny pocket where none of the angles converged. It was the only pathway out of the triangle, but reaching it meant crossing 20 yards of open moss under a hunter who rarely missed twice. The battlefield had become a puzzle with one brutally precise solution: solve it or die inside the triangle of death.
For a moment, the forest stopped breathing. No wind stirred, no branches creaked. Even the fog seemed to hold still, suspended between the pines like wet glass. The marksman lay pressed against the frozen earth, waiting for the German to break the tension with the next shot. But it never came. Instead, an unnatural quiet settled over the triangle, a silence so complete that it felt intentional, engineered. The German sniper was no longer firing to kill. He was waiting for them to make the first mistake. The squad shifted uneasily in their positions, each movement measured, each breath controlled. Through the mist, the marksman caught a faint glint on the ridge, not the flash of a muzzle, but something softer, light sliding across a scope lens hidden between slabs of rock. It lasted less than a heartbeat, but it was enough. The German sniper had repositioned again, and now he had a perfect angle on the clearing. The marksman steadied his rifle, exhaled, and waited. Patience would decide the duel. Whoever shot first without certainty would die second.
Then the silence broke, not with gunfire, but with sound so faint it felt imagined. The soft, deliberate rasp of metal brushing stone. A sniper adjusting his bipod. The marksman's pulse slowed to a predator's rhythm. He inched his rifle upward 1 centimeter at a time,
the sling brushing silently against his sleeve. Through the narrow gap between two pine trunks he saw movement, a silhouette half blurred by vapor shifting behind a fractured boulder. It was the German, preparing the shot that would finish the patrol. No dramatic motion, no profile fully revealed, just the subtle lowering of a head and the whisper of a rifle butt settling into a shoulder pocket. The marksman aligned his sights on the one exposed element, a dark circle no larger than a thumbprint, the edge of the enemy's scope. The forest contracted around him, the world narrowing to a single breath. When the German's muzzle dipped a fraction of an inch toward the clearing, the marksman squeezed the trigger. A single, precise crack shattered the silence. The Duel, balanced for hours on a knife's edge, tipped at last toward one man.
The echo of the shot drifted through the pines, swallowed quickly by fog and distance. No answering fire came, no retaliation, no scrambling movement, no shift of shadows. The marksman waited, counting silently. 5 seconds, 10, 20, still nothing. The quiet felt heavier now, not like an ambush, but like an ending. He signaled the squad forward, and together they moved over the frost-bitten earth, creeping toward the ridge where the German had last hidden. The smell of damp soil thickened as they approached. At the base of a split pine, partially buried beneath exposed roots, they found him. The German sniper lay twisted where he'd fallen, his rifle still clutched tight across his chest, the cracked scope glinting faintly through a fracture in the lens. He had tried to crawl deeper into the tangle of roots, as if the forest itself might hide him for one more shot, one more breath. But the marksman's bullet had struck cleanly through the optic and into the eye behind it, instant, final. Even in death, the enemy looked composed, almost peaceful, as if he'd simply stopped moving rather than been killed.
The squad gathered in a quiet semicircle, no one speaking. There was no triumph here, no celebration, only the solemn understanding of what kind of man they had been fighting. His gear was minimal, carefully wrapped rations, spare ammunition stored with meticulous precision, and a small notebook sealed in an oilskin pouch. Inside were crude sketches of the forest ridge and firing lanes, detailed observations written in tight German script, and a final page bearing a single line: Nur der Wind weiß, wer schießt zuerst. Only the wind knows who shoots first. The marksman closed the notebook and set it gently atop the fallen man's chest. War rarely offered respect, but snipers lived in a different world, one built on patience, discipline, and the thin edge between hunter and hunted. As the fog thickened around the roots of the pine, and the patrol prepared to push deeper into the gray woods, the marksman took one last look at the still figure. This duel had never been personal. It was simply two men doing the same deadly work. One walked away, one stayed behind.
By the time the squad crested the ridge, the fog had thickened into a living wall, swallowing everything beyond a few feet. The forest seemed empty, but the marksman knew better. Every shadow, every rustle could hide death. The morning's duel had left its mark: broken branches where the enemy had shifted, depressions in the moss where bullets had landed, the faint smell of spent powder and the damp air. He moved slowly, rifle angled,
eyes scanning. But the valley below was silent, almost unnervingly so, as if the fog itself had claimed the rest of the German patrol. No screams, no movement, no evidence of retreat, just emptiness. The silence pressed in, heavy with the memory of shots fired and lives lost. Each man in the squad felt it, the collective unease of stepping into a space where the forest had become both judge and executioner.
They found nothing further. No bodies, no gear, no sign of who else had been hiding. The fog had taken them. Only the marksman's keen eyes, trained through weeks of stalking and being stalked, allowed him to navigate the treacherous ridge without incident. Every step forward was cautious, deliberate, a reminder that in the gray woods the hunt never truly ended. At the far edge of the ridge, where the trees began to thin, he paused and looked back. The pine roots, the frost-laden undergrowth, the quiet of the battlefield, it was all a testament to the lethal patience required of men like him and the men he faced. The duel had concluded, but its lessons lingered. Precision, patience, and the unforgiving truth that in war the fog took more than lives. It took certainty, peace, and innocence. As the squad descended, leaving the ridge and the empty forest behind, the marksman carried the weight of the duel, knowing that while one enemy had fallen, the forest would forever guard its secrets.